here.
Hey, welcome back to the Fern Project. Today is the day we actually build something on site. I am so excited.
Dad, having fun.
Yep, I'm having fun.
Sit on the back of the truck.
Starting the morning out with two helpers. I have Carter here giving me a hand, and I also have my
stack our
3-year-old
logs.
here giving us a hand. And I'll probably be joined later on by my dad as well. In the last episode, I went to Lowe's and purchased these materials. If you're curious what the damage was, you can check out that video and get a breakdown of this project cost. So I think this makes like the 4th time that I've loaded and unloaded this stack of boards. This is the downside of doing a in the middle of the woods project. So right here is where the deck's gonna go. This is a bank that actually goes down off the side of the trail, and right where I want the deck to be, there is a ginormous grapevine growing, and it is growing up probably over 50 feet, covering this pine tree and slowly choking it out. So I don't feel bad at all clipping that bad boy off and putting it in its place. Hopefully the pine tree makes a nice recovery. But we're not starting until we get this mess cleaned up. So this deck will have a post on each corner. So there's 4 posts, and then it'll have a post that goes halfway between each length on the sides. So there's 4 more posts, and then 1 more in the middle. So a total of 9 posts. I'm not putting concrete footers on this deck. I want it to be not a permanent fixture in the woods. So we are putting these blocks down as footers. They're solid concrete blocks. We just have to use a mattock in order to create a little level area down in the soil to place these blocks. So using the method that my husband showed me in another video to make sure a building site is square, we have roughly figured where these blocks will go, but it was difficult doing the squaring on a bank. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna have to move a few of these as we work. Oh, speaking of past episodes, remember when we found the millipede on the hike? Yep, here's another one.
Yeah, you probably wanted about 5 feet. So that if you put anything in there, they can't drink it.
Yeah, and they need to have a little bit in there so if you put a larger animal and they lean against them, well, that feels much better.
So we're passing the time working on this project by contemplating another building project. So that's one way to keep a positive attitude about how much you can get accomplished. Now what we're doing here is measuring the front corner to the back corner, making sure we still have our blocks 12 feet apart. The dimensions on this deck are 16 foot wide by 12 foot deep. But here's how we figured the square. So you're going to take your length and multiply it by itself. So in this case, our deck is 16 foot long. It's 16 times 16. We end up with 256 feet. Then do the same with your width. So in this case, the width of our deck is 12 feet. So we have 12 times 12. That's 144 feet. Add those two numbers together. So we have 256 plus 144. Now we have 400 feet. we're going to take 400 and square that number, which means 20. So what do we do with the 20 feet? 20 feet is the measurement that should be from one corner to the other corner. It's the diagonal cutting across my deck. So if I have a tape measure going across my length and it's at 16 feet, or 12 feet, I'm sorry, and I have, 16. Listen to me. If I have a tape measure going across my length at 16 feet, and I have a tape measure measuring from block to block of my width, which is 12 feet, and then I take a tape measure and I run it from the point where my 16 foot and 12 foot tape measure meet up diagonally out across to the other corner, that measurement should be 20 feet. If I need to move one way to my right or left or in or out to make all three of those tape measures measure what they should, 12, 16, and 20, wherever all those numbers meet up, that is the square point that I'm going to place my block. So that's essentially what we're working on here. Maybe there's some masterful way of doing that with just two people. Maybe if you had some extra stakes, I find it's just easier if you have a third hand in order to get all that measuring done. But there's just two of us, so we are doing the best we can and hoping that we have it as square as possible. So when we start setting these posts and putting on our actual boards, so I'm not always the most detail-oriented person, and it is completely like me to say, hey, let's just skip that step and go right to building the box. I mean, if my boards are all the right lengths, won't it turn out square anyhow? But the thing is, especially with these long boards, the 16-foot boards, they have a lot of flexibility in them. They're saturated with the chemicals that they're pressure treated with. So the truth of the matter is it is absolutely possible to build what looks like a rectangle and it turns out more like a rhombus. And that's going to be a big problem when we start putting deck boards across the top and find out that we don't really have a square box. So that's why I'm taking the time to do this thing that is a little against my grain to do, but I'm learning and I am assuring myself it's going to be well worth the effort. Now the posts across the front of this deck are not going to be very far off the ground at all because I want the front edge of this deck to be level with the trail. So that's what I'm measuring off here is these little stubby posts that we'll be putting across the front. That's actually where we're going to start the construction of this deck. We're going to start creating the base with the shortest post where it's going to be the easiest to manage and then work our way out to our long post in the back. We're using a portable generator today to operate this table saw because it is not battery powered. All of our other tools though do operate on a battery, so later in the day things should get a lot quieter. So we're putting these brackets on the bottom of the post. They're just a metal bracket with a little square base that has some space, some air space to it, so that moisture does not collect under the base of that post. Even though they are pressure treated, if they sit in moisture or sit directly on the ground for a period of time, they will start to rot. So just keeping it up off the ground where the air can dry it in between wet and rainy times is going to be enough to keep these posts dry and make them last much, much longer than they would if I put them directly onto my blocks or onto the ground. They're pretty simple. They just screw on. They were, I'm trying to recall, I want to say around $10 a piece. So yeah, it was, $90 in little brackets, but $90 to get quite a few extra years of use out of this deck seemed like a worthwhile investment. So here we're working with our long length boards, which are 16 foot long. They are 2-inch by 8-inch. And originally we planned on doing 2-inch by 10-inch boards just to make the deck a little bit more stout. But the truth of the matter is when we went to purchase them, I literally could not lift the 2 by 10 by 16 board, and I knew I would be part of the construction process. So we decided that we could get rid of that extra 2 inches of lumber across 16 feet, and then I was able to sufficiently manhandle a 2 by 8 by 16. So here we are, 2 by 8 by 16, and we're attaching our post to that first length board to begin the construction of the box.
Seriously? You know what? We might end up actually shortening that one then, because I'm at the top of this one.
Yeah, right there.
Right where?
Right down a little bit. Wait, no, up a little bit. Up a little more. One more. Keep going.
That's right. So,
Yeah, because this isn't even on the ground yet.
ouch. So we have two things going on here, I think. One.
So I am proud to announce that till this project is over, I will have the first part of my degree from the School of Hard Knocks. And I'll probably end up with an advanced degree till it's all said and done.
So since we know we're probably going to need that full length, let's undo that one and we'll screw it onto this one. And then we'll level to that. Does that sound better? Now here's the other thing. I'm right on the edge of that.
So what's happening is our deck is going to be sitting level, obviously, but the trail that it sits against sits on a downhill grade. So the right side of the deck will sit closer to the trail than the left side of the deck. Problem is we started our construction with attaching that right post, which then is going to dictate how high that left side post needs to be. And I already pre-cut the left side post. Oops. Measure twice, cut once. So because I already cut that post, we need to start by attaching the post to the left side of the deck and let that dictate how short the right post should be. So thankfully this is a fixable error, just adding a few extra steps to things, but we've got this covered. Carter's a real quick study. He catches on to things fast, and we're going to survive this project, I am sure. Now we have things back on the right track again.
All right. So. Right there.
So Carter's holding on to that post on the right side while I make sure our 16-foot board is level, and then he's marking off just how long that right post needs to be. We'll trim it and attach it.
Turn the block.
Now that we have that front board attached, we're going to go ahead and attach the side board here, the 12-foot board. And we are actually attaching it level with the top of the, or flush with the top of that corner post. Now, the reason we're doing that is because we want to cover that post with deck boards ultimately, because people are going to be stepping on and off the deck from this right corner where it sits the closest to the trail. You'll see as we go, we'll actually allow our posts to stick well above the sideboards to help create the railing that will go around the deck later. And now it's just a matter of repeating the process. So we have the level out here, and we're going to use that to figure out where that board is level, attach it to that post, and there you can see the box is starting to take place.
Do you know what I just realized?
What?
These 16-foot boards are gonna go only like to the edge of here, so there's gonna be like that much. You know what I mean?
Oh, right.
So as the applaud was exploding in my head and the angels were singing from above and I felt like I had mastered the building of half a box, Carter realized that we did not build our corner correctly. It's that same corner. We just keep coming back to revisit it over and over and over.
Let me get this middle one in. That'll help it hold it.
Yeah, it actually might be easier to fix now that we have more.
So the issue
Why don't we just do the whole
is
thing
that our
and then
deck
fix it?
boards are 16 foot
You think that'll
long.
work?
So that means
So
that
that
front
just that one
16
that way
foot
a little bit.
board needs to
Like,
cap
right
over the end of our 12 foot boards on either side. So essentially they're about 2 inches wide. So that means the post needs to be set back about 2 inches from the edge so that when that
Yeah,
front
you want it,
board
like, flush with the end.
is installed, it's covering
So the boards
the
are gonna go
post
across this way,
and
right?
the side boards. So right now
one
we have the opposite situation. You can see that 12 foot board, the end of that is actually sticking out and visible from the front of the deck. It shouldn't be. In other words, we're going to have a deck that's 4 inches wider than my 16 foot deck boards. That's the problem. Thank God Carter realized this at this point in the game.
Kind of glad I thought about that before
Me too.
I almost started putting the.
There.
Okay, now put one screw in and we'll measure it.
Okay.
Make sure we got it right.
Got it.
So we have the fronts and sides of this deck built, and what's left is putting the long 16 foot board across the back. But we need to raise up that rear left post a little bit higher so that I have about 3 feet of post sticking out above the level of the deck for the railing. And we're going to do this by adding a couple footer blocks underneath it. Like I said, we're working on a bank, so it was a little tricky anticipating exactly what materials I might need with the amount of drop that there was. So while we're waiting, Dad and I are getting the joist hangers installed so that as soon as that last board goes up across the back, we can start dropping the joist across this deck.
Because then we have screws that got to go side screw. Okay.
So he's showing me that we need to measure the width of this hanger as we install it. It's flexible, so it can be made wider or more narrow. Our boards, even though they're supposed to be 2 inches across, are graded lumber, so they're actually more like 1 3/4 inches. So we got to make sure that that's about how wide we're making the opening so that they fit in there snugly when we go to put in the screws from the side to fasten everything tight. So these brackets have holes where they get attached to my framing board. But then there's also these little like notched out areas. And that's where I'm gonna they'll guide a screw that will go in at an angle and catch both my joist board and my framing board. So that's how the bracket actually works. So I think there's space for 4 of those on here. But they're going to take a slightly smaller screw, but even though the width of the screw is smaller, it's going to have to be longer than the ones I'm using currently in order to be able to catch both the joist and the framing board.
Look here, that goes in, that's about where...
So over the course of 16 feet, there's going to be a joist that goes every 2 feet. That means I have a total of 8 joists plus 1 more board to go across the end. So I purchased 9 12-foot boards for this project. This is the part I've been anxiously awaiting, the part where somehow we're going to hoist this really heavy board up into place. And once again, Carter is thinking ahead, and he is pre-drilling a few of these screws into place so that once they're up, he's not starting from scratch trying to get them started, but they're already through the framing board and ready to be drilled the rest of the way into the posts. So here it goes.
Square right here. Okay, hang on. Here we go.
I cannot even tell you how happy that level looking board makes me feel.
Tell me when.
Up a little bit, down a little bit.
Right there.
Oh, up a little bit.
It's a daddy long legger crawling up my leg.
Yeah, did you catch that? While I was holding this board into place, I had a daddy long-legger crawling up the back of my leg. Woo!
Wow, see? The worst part of the day has just happened. We need to put it, so Dad and I put that bracket there on the other side, so we need to make this one the same, even if it is, I didn't think about that now, sorry Carter. It needs to be the same distance from the end as that post, so that the
That's right.
hanger,
That one over there.
remember that?
What's still on there?
What's left now is this middle post, and it needs to be raised up a little bit with some footer blocks, and it also needs to be the correct distance from the end so it doesn't interfere with the placement of our joist hangers. Once it's in place, we can start putting the joist across this deck, and our simple box has become a deck. And my idea of this outdoor oasis area has become a reality. So it is pretty awesome to have seen all of this happen today. So back to that idea of making sure this is a square box. We are measuring from corner to corner here across that diagonal. Remember, it should be 20 feet. No need to have extra tape measures this time because I already have a 16-foot board and a 12-foot board as part of this structure. Those are the measurements for the side at this point. We're making sure that we are 20 feet corner to corner.
Hot dog.
And we are.
Frickin' his everybody's at
So
least
we
8
have
inches
done
off rule.
well, and we can now confidently move forward and secure the joist across this box, knowing that when it's time to put the deck boards on top, they will fit. We are not going to have a cattywampus shape that we're trying to work with. Here we go, marking those 2-foot centers across the back. We'll install the joist hangers, and then we'll start putting some boards across this bad boy. So if you're going to do a project like this, make sure that your joist hangers are hung low enough so that your floor joist is actually flush with the top of your framing boards. In my case, I needed to drop the hangers down by about a ½ inch from the top of the board in order to actually create an 8-inch space between the top of the framing board and the bottom of the joist hanger for my joist board to sit in. Conveniently, that little bit I had to drop them down could be measured with my drill bit. There was a mark on my drill bit, so instead of measuring it out by hand each time, I just held up my drill bit, made sure it was the right length distance from the top, and went ahead and installed the hanger.
Let's put one in the end and pull this together before you put this. When you put these through,
Well, Dad, let me attach this end first, up here.
is that flush against the end?
So there's the first floor joist. and I'm excited. It looks like something serious is happening
Okay,
now,
go ahead and
other
put that
than
one
just a big old mess in the middle of the woods. But my dad is pointing out that it's really important when we do this that we push those framing boards, which are long and flexible, up against those joists so that when we insert the screws through the framing brackets, everything is being held snug and tight. And he has a great little trick for showing us how to get that done.
Oh, Dad, look at that. You're such a stinking genius. Leverage at its finest, right there. He's pushing the board in so that it's uptight. And so we don't have the screw out the end.
Yeah, he is being a genius here. He used the shovel backwards, actually, to be a lever and push pressure against that long, flexible framing board to make it tight against the joist. And because levers are the tools that they are, it takes him pretty little amount of effort to make that happen instead of having to apply a whole lot of brute force to try to shove that in tight some other way. Sorry, we'll have to briefly interrupt this deck building project to catch a toad.
He wants out of here.
Look at this guy. This is a Eastern American toad. They are super common around here. My kids go out in the evenings and love seeing how many they can find. They're completely harmless and a ton of fun, and they're great for insect control in the garden. There you can see how those brackets guide in a screw at an angle, catching both the joist and the framing board. My dad keeps telling me once you learn to build a box, you can build anything, and this is really starting to look like a well-constructed box, and I'm feeling like we've accomplished so much, and I am feeling ready to take on a whole lot more. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend you duplicate everything you see us do.
Oh my gosh.
With the frame of the deck built, the next job's going to be to put the deck boards on. I had 28 deck boards I bought, and they're all 16 foot long. That is a ton of lumber. I think maybe even literally. Probably not, but we certainly didn't want to be carrying it all back. Those long boards weren't going to fit in the truck or the buggy or anything else, and my husband says, well, just back the trailer in. I'm thinking, me back a trailer the whole way up a trail through the woods? It sounded like a disaster. But of course, he made it look like as easy as driving the trailer forward in no time flat. He had my entire load of lumber back at the site. It's the end of the day, so we'll unload this and call it at that and resume tomorrow for part 2 of finishing this deck off. hope that this video inspires you to get outside and to get creative and to stay positive about taking on new challenges and dreaming big. I think that the worst that could possibly happen is that you'll simply learn something new. Tune in for part 2 of this. We'll show you how the deck finishes up. It is absolutely awesome when it's done, and I'm pretty sure once the National Park Services sees what I'm doing here, they're going to be contacting me to put in a few decks around the country. I hope Carter's ready to take this show on the road. Oh my gosh. So go ahead and click subscribe, and please leave some comments. I would love to get connected with you too.